Okay, so thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming to this session of this week for discussing about the AI Act. We have just started last Tuesday. Today will be the second day. My name is Alberto Bogarin, and for those of you who are coming for the first time here, just to let us know that the Research Center on Intelligent Technology of the University of Santiago is hosting this event. As you may, sorry. Oh, yeah. I will get close to the mic then. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, that will be better this way. Yeah, thank you. And for that, for those of you who are visiting us for the first time, just let you know that our center develops some research in many different areas related with AI, and one of them, which is very closely related with the event we're hosting this week, is natural language technologies. So in this area, we're mostly devoting for developing projects in the two main areas of natural language processing, which is understanding and generating. And in these topics, we are working in different applications and different models for using natural language as a way of providing explainability to our systems. So this has been applied in several areas, in the medical domain, also industrial domains, and also related with information provided to the users of different services in the public administration, and also companies. And one of the things we are more proud about this is, which is also general in the CiTIUS, is that most of these results which are transferred or are provided as services to the society and the companies are results from our previous basic research. This is the case for many of the applications we develop in natural language technologies, and I invite all of you to visit the website of the CiTIUS just to take a look about some of these projects and some of these applications we have been developing in this area. So thank you very much for coming, and now the floor is given back to Jose Alonso, which is the main organizer of this event. So Jose, please.
Thanks, Alberto. First of all, I want to welcome everyone for being here. It's very nice to see so many people in the theater in CiTIUS after so long time of having online events. Anyway, also welcome to all those people who are connected remotely, who were not able to come here and that are following us online. This is the second panel. We call this event the AI Regulation Week. The idea is to discuss about what are the implications of the new proposal of regulation of artificial intelligence. And we have a very nice first panel on Tuesday. Today, the focus of the panel is on explainability issues, and we have a very well-known panelists to lead the discussion. I'm sure that it will be an interesting discussion, and I hope that the audience is also ready to take part and to contribute to this challenging topic. I'm talking here on behalf of the NL4Sci project. This is an ITN Marie Curie project where we are training students on new techniques on explainable artificial intelligence. And I'm happy that most of the students of the network are already here. Actually, one of the students in the network is Ettore Mariotti, that is one of the moderators of the table today. The second moderator, Carlos, is coming from a second network that is like our sister, is No Bias. It is a very related ITN network. We were in contact with them from the beginning, before all the pandemic comes. And talking with the coordinator of this ITN, we were talking about the chance of organizing some event together. And this was not feasible till today. So I'm really happy that students from No Bias were coming to Santiago to join us in this event. And hopefully it's the first of next event that we could organize together in the next month. Actually, in the next year, probably. Tomorrow we have a third panel, that is the last one, that is focused on fairness. And this one will be mainly led by the other network. So we will welcome you back here tomorrow too. So now the floor is for Ettore and Carlos, who are going to lead this panel. So it's your time and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Alberto, for the initial words. And I will quickly jump into the discussion by inviting Professor Fosca. Fosca Giannotti is the Director of Research Computer Science at the Information Science Technology Institute (EFAEDO) of National Research Council in Pisa. She is a pioneering scientist in mobility data mining, social network analysis, and privacy-preserving data mining. And she also leads the Pisa KDD Lab, Knowledge Discovery and Data Mining Laboratory, whose some PhDs are here seated into the audience. And enough talking, and I would like to give you the floor to speak.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for organizing this event. It's a pleasure, first of all, being here, but also being in presence. So having the opportunity of seeing people in face that have shoulder, hands, that have emotions, that give you emotions. So it's and thanks for organizing this week, because I think it's an important actions that we have in front of us. This approval of the AI regulation, which is now is in a proposal. Now all the member states have the goal of having internal discussion and then propose recommendations or modifications to this law. So the debate is just started. I think usually those takes a couple of years before arriving to the final approval. And once it's approved, the regulation means law for all the members, for the member states. So that's a very important moment. And we all know that this is will be debated a lot, because of course there are different interests there. So Europe definitely wants to have for artificial intelligence its own line, and the regulation, it's an act which is at the end of a process which started in 2016, 2017 with they set this ethical, high-level ethical group where for AI. For 1 year they worked and try to set the stage. So what is AI, what should be the requirements, and I would say something. So and I think that's there is the awareness that, I mean, Europe wants to govern AI in a direction which is coherent with the values of Europe. So I think this is I'm very proud that this act is being done, because it's of course there is a risk, and there are some economical forces that highlight this risk, that we may reduce the power of innovation that the European companies may use with AI because of this regulation. So the debate is really important, that and it is important that the young people are aware of what is the current things. And of course explainability is an important factor. I will try to put there some of the things which have moved us on these research areas, but also some a reflection about the responsible AI, which is at the very basement, the very basic of this new act. So for me, my vision is that artificial explainable AI, it's important, it's a crucial aspect for preserving the human agency, the capacity of acting. There is all the regulations behind, but there's this principle, the fact that at the end we want an artificial intelligence that does not replace humans, but empower humans with extra tools. I say these tools as a computer scientist, but it's a lot of other way to. So let me. Okay, now. Okay, it moves. So actually, for explainability, the starting point was even before the regulation, the Regulation Act, AI Regulation Act, was the GDPR. That made a very strong point. The legislators said that there is the right of individuals to obtain meaningful explanations of the logic involved when automated algorithmic individual decision making is applied. So the formulation of this article created a lot of debates, mostly among the legislators, the philosophers, because there were some of them that they were saying, okay, as it is written, automated algorithmic decision, maybe okay, you just put a small interaction with the user, and this is not anymore an automatic decision, and you can keep all the things together. So there has been debate with this one. Then there has been a further sort of what they call a position for explaining better this article. So, but the intention of the legislators behind this was that really was the right of explanations. And this is important because if you do not understand the decision of something, you cannot defend yourself. That's why it is important. If you don't have the clear motivation, the clear reason of why some decision has been taken on you, you cannot really defend. So that was the first point. So, and then as I was saying, there has been this effort of high-level expert group of trying to define the borders of what is the trustworthy artificial intelligence, and trying also to find to set a set of requirements that an AI system should have. A lot of debates on what is an AI system, so the difficulty of defining exactly what is an AI system, but so there are these three important points. It has to be legal, it has to be ethical, and robust. And those are the three sort of aggregation of the various requirements. And they in these guidelines, they are very. I recommend all the young people to have it on the table, because they define the principles, the requirements, but also the final effort, which is currently very useful. I will show some. It's a sort of assessment, guideline for assessment of an AI system. I mean, for computer scientists, they are not a surprise, because they, in some sense, they try to define which are the steps, the actions to be done for each step of the designing an AI system, and designing and deploying an AI system. But once it's there, it's and that will be very useful, because things that then the AI system maybe are object of a trade. So some public administrator has to buy a system. So is this AI system coherent with the law? So that means which are the elements that have to be certified for this. And the implication of this, and this discussion that we will do in these 2 years, will be that a lot of companies, there will be a lot of new companies that will try to also to create a business of this certification moment. So the AI regulation says also another things, that should be each country should have an authority, sort of a national authority, as was for privacy, capable of, certified certificators, so being in some sense a sort of the angel of the implementation of the law, and then also the regulator. I mean, the one responsible for any implementation, interpretation, all the things that are and auditing as well. So the AI Act as a after those 2 years of discussion, the proposal of the AI Act is to have a sort of hierarchy of risk that help us to categorize, sort of categorization of the AI system with respect the risk of with respect humans, with respect society. So and then there are systems which may not have an acceptable risk. So this kind of application cannot be done. So like, for example, social scoring is something which is not acceptable in Europe. And of course, all this comes also after Cambridge Analytica, after a lot of things that all we know. So this awareness, the need for regulator, it's because of things have been, something has been happening. So, and then there are AI systems which are high risk, and that for those systems which are within this high risk definition, like example are medical devices, recruitment application. So those let me remove this. Okay. Can I remove completely? Yes. Are permitted, but subject to several conditions, several compliance, satisfying several requirements. So, and they need, before to be deployed, a conformity assessment. And then there are other transparency risks that again there are those kind of applications. They are permitted but subject to information about some. They have some transparency obligations, and transparency means explainability and accountability. Also having the capacity of recognizing who is responsible for what in a certain process. And of course, there are minimal no risk. And this parameter may be changed during time, because the legislators were aware that this technology may provide new forms of system which cannot be put in this ontology so far. So it is open to dynamic dynamic revision. I see this as a positive. From the legislator point of view, this is not maybe at risk, because who is going to decide when to revise? So there are some implications of this, but this is not a new for in terms of regulation of law. This is not new. This is something that is already in place. But all those, I say this because all those elements are part of the debate that is there, will be there. So for high risk system, so those which are like medical devices, so some system that for us are really the one that we are aimed at. So they need they need to, those are the requirements which have been defined. So that means that there has to be implemented a risk assessment in advance, use high quality training, validation and testing data. So draw up technical documentation, logging, again, for computer scientists and also for data mining. So we know that those things have to be done, some of them, but there are some novelties as well. As ensure appropriate degree of transparencies and provide users with information, capabilities and limitations. Ensure human oversight. So measure built into the system and to be implemented for the user. So the humans at the end has to have the capacity of acting as last chance. And then of course robustness, accuracy and cybersecurity. Now, this is the legal framework. Then there's been another interesting discussion which has been strongly interacting with the legal component, which is the philosophical component. The philosophical components, which is again trying to formulate what should be ethical AI. You know, there are things that so ethics is something which is very difficult to formalize, because depends by the context, by the culture, depends by so it's not and it, dynamic in time also again. So but so in some sense the discussion brought to 5 core principles. There is this nice overview survey of the principles by Luciano Floridi that he tried to survey the many proposals for ethical, for the set of principles that human AI should have. And then so because there was a, while Europe was discussing, also Canada was discussing this, also in Australia, so also China, also. So this topic at the end spread in many different countries. So Luciano Floridi so synthesized those 5 core principles for ethical AI. So the system should be provide beneficence, not maleficence, not harmful. Autonomy, again, autonomy for justice within the rule of law. And then also inserted as a 5th principle, important principle, explicability. Explicability in 2 dimensions. One, he call it intelligibility. So how does the system work? For non-experts, so it should be capable of be understood by non-expert patients or customers, and for expert, so the designer, the engineers, the data scientists which are working behind. Again, we see since now that there are different players in this game of explanations, and also accountability, who is responsible for, and again, explanations it's important for that as well. So you can account if every step. And then they define it with this set of requirements that the system should satisfy. And of course, there is a human agency and oversight, the one I was saying before, the capacity of acting, technical robustness, transparency, and then transparency is traceability, explainability, and communication. There are three elements there. Of course, non-discrimination, fairness, diversity, societal and environmental well-being. That's another requirement that in the design that should be taken in consideration. That is can be articulated into dimension. One, it's the transformation of society, so the impact on work and skill from one side. The other one, it's also the impact on environment. This is also another important issue for computer scientists or for those which are working in machine learning. We know that the algorithm they have the cost in terms of consumption, electricity consumption may be very high. So here there is the challenge of designing, of inventing methods which are really sustainable. And I have to admit, I don't see so much research on this in this line. So I think that we should. There is a space there really for inventing something which may change. I was hoping in quantum computing solving the things, but still they are not. Their main interest is not yet the efficiency and the consumption. So, and then of course accountability. So okay, this is the stage. So which are the motivations? The motivation why the legislators decided that there is something that has to be some risk. We all know the many advantages of AI. So where there are the risks. So I'm sure that all of you know this example from the Compass. The system used for supporting the decision of judges were taking the decisions on the providing special freedom for people in jail, and then the system was helping the judges to evaluate the risk of recidivism. So the journalists of Repubblica, ProPublica, they made an investigation for they took the 2 years of decisions done by the Compass system, and then out of analyzing those decisions and observing the ground truth, what was really the behavior of the person, if how much it was respecting the risk that was done to that person. So the journalists discovered there was a strong bias with respect the black people. So they were systematically the system was systematically providing a higher risk, and then doing more mistakes. Of course, the system was not racist. The system was simply using data that where the statistical distribution of the two populations were completely different. So the system was not wrong from statistical point of view, but it was trained, even was based on he learned, the system learned the bias that were in those data. Now the problem is that the judges, so what should do the judges? So simply take the risk. So if the judges consider only the risk which has been provided by the system, so now the judges has in front to, if just see a number, low risk, high risk, the judges can just take in consideration that number. So if you see it's Dylan as a low risk 3 and Bernard as high risk 10, so of course I mean the judges has to or consider the recommendation as something, and do not put in any in discussion what might be what is the algorithm, what the algorithm says, and then say or otherwise don't trust. Simply don't trust the system, and take the decision according its own knowledge. So in both cases, even if the judges follow the system without any extra information, or do not trust the system and take a different decision, in both cases we are failing. So we are failing in providing useful technology to those people. So we fail in providing something which put the judges empower the judges with more things. So the first case is that the bias in the data, the algorithm learn the bias and reproduces what is there. So and of course the consequence of that was that there was a case that ProPublica showed that was there was a mistake by the system. Another famous examples that I'm sure all of you know as the other is that the system which was predicting this in health, in the case of health, the system was predicting the risk of having pneumonia by some and systematically the system, so those people were arriving to an emergency room, and systematically the system was having this rule: if he has asthma, he has low risk, because of course he learned by data where if you have asthma, so you are under antibiotic, so it's not that you don't have that risk, but there is also another information, some hidden variables which were not there, that you are under a certain medical practice that was not there. So he systematically was recommending low risk for people with asthma. This was another example. So was missing the information about the fact that those people were under a special treatment. So there are all this information, so problems in the data, and so bias hidden variables which are not there. But by the way, so and those are situations that if we stay with systems which are which have these problems, at the end you will not succeed in having trust the one that we want. If we want this enormous uptake of artificial intelligence, a pervasive uptake of artificial intelligence, we have to be sure that because of course also humans they do mistakes. It's not that humans are perfect. The humans may take decisions where they are tired, or maybe they have a poor scalability. They are not capable of solving all the problem. They may have prejudice, the humans as well. It's not that so, and they may also have bias. So we want to face with this problem. So we want to have algorithms that might be, they may not necessarily be more objective than humans, but they are also discriminative. They are opaque. So we have to face those two things. We want to help humans because the humans may do mistakes, and if we provide some more knowledge, more it surely improve their capacity of doing decisions. But on the other, but we can do this only if we create very trustful system. And of course, there are in high stakes scenario there are plenty of ethical systems. Now I'll try very fast to overview what is an explanation. Explanation. What is an explanation? It's something which has been studied by philosophers since the very ancient Greek ones. So an explanation may be a story, I tell you a story, or an explanation may be an example, or an explanation may be something very technical. What is a good explanation for whom? There isn't an explanation which fits for all. So, and there are also different motivations that we may have from the users may have. So maybe you want to know, so you want to have your right of explanations. Am I being treated fairly? Can I contest? So the engineers, they want to see if the system is working as it's designed. The regulators. So that's the first point. There isn't an explanation, a form of explanation which fit for all, and an ideal explanation should model the user background. So we need to know who we have in front. Different flavors of explanation in different AI fields. So again, this is not a new topic. So AI has tried to tackle the problem of explanation since in many different fields of AI. So maybe a decision tree, or the model by itself, maybe feature importance, surrogate model, variables, feature relevance. There might be different and different flavors in different AI fields. So computer visions, so you may have uncertainty maps showing which portion of the image has been particularly relevant, or saliency map we are seeing, so which are the portion of the pixel, the groups of pixels which particularly have contributed to a decision. So here we have the system has predicted that this image is a junco bird, and the motivation, the explanation for that saliency map is show what are the pixel. Here there are a set of algorithms which are compared. You see different algorithms. For different algorithms, there are different pixels which have contributed mostly to that decision. Or maybe a visual prediction, some multimodal, a sort of multimodal explanation, maybe a narrative. So as being predicted to be this image is a Western grab because of what? So maybe a description of a portion of it's a large bird with a white neck and black box. So it's in natural language, and this is the group here. It's very special in doing this kind of narrative. Or maybe some exemplars or prototypes. So portion showing something, other examples which are similar to you, which motivated that prediction. So I predicted this kind of bird because the neck is like this one, and this is this bird. The body is like this one. So, or the entire pictures. There is another kind of explanation, which is factual, the counterfactual, that also try to activate a sort of contrastative reasoning. So I give you the why, and also I give the why not. I try to explain what you can do for changing the outcome. So in this case, so this is a rule-based explainer. So you have been your loan has been declined because your age, your job, your income. So if you want to have a different outcome, you should increase your income. You should change the age. And so you see that not all the counterfactual are useful. So there is plenty of research in this area as well. So providing so this is another example of counterfactual, and see how much it is useful. So the following features were too high, the following features were too low, the following feature require changes. So pictorially, you try to evocate where you have to change. Yeah, you have a sort of a small. So, and this also activates a sort of what if exploration by the user. So say, okay, if I change this, what will be changed? And so you see what will be the new situation of the recommended change. So, and there is a lot of research and innovation. There are some vertical systems which already provide such kind of explanation. And then, of course, you can provide other surface where you can explore. You provide to the users an interface to explore all the motivation, the distributions of the various features, putting together all this repertoire of methods which are capable of doing. So the counterfactual, the exemplars, the saliency map, the features relevance, such that you can provide a variety of them. Going further, so we can have an explanation as a conversation, a human-machine conversation, where you start to offer all these various repertoire of explanations in an interactive way, and then you provide fact, counterfactual, exemplars, so far so good. So, and there is plenty of methods so far, and we were saying yesterday that so in this 10 minutes of presentation, probably other 10 methods have been published by someone on explainable methods. So the taxonomy, it's in simple, is that there are methods which try to explain post hoc. So you stay with the black box, and then you design methods which are capable of explaining post hoc. There are methods which are transparent by design. There are those two big family, but I'm not going in the methods. I imagine that all of you know, otherwise there is no time. So now, what are the questions now? The open question that we still need to solve. So the usefulness of the explanations, that's one important point. So how to validate the usefulness of explanation for different stakeholders? So what we should do, situation testing, randomized trials as in medicine testing. So we have to put in place a different way to validate. So of course you can say the length, the length of the explanations, the depth of the tree, but there are also, those are also systems where it's the overall outcome which counts. So it's the explanations, the machine and the person. It's a collaboration among the two. It's the outcome of the ecosystem that we need to validate. So we need to put in place some different validation methods. So so what is good for who? This is really something that there are now the research out, plenty of research on the methods. Now the research try to focus on the user. So our AI system now, so you have the AI system, you have the users, and then you have the explainers in between, and those which generate the explanations that has to be capable of capturing the explanations, the forms that we saw, but also capable of capturing the users which has in front, and try to interact the two. That means that we need also to model the user, to have some psychological, so we have to model the decision-making process. We have to be capable of modeling the interaction with the, so is the user has changed its behavior after that I provided an explanations? The decision has been better than without the explanations. Now, so there is this new concepts that have to enter in the validation process. So, okay, this is a DARPA. You know, DARPA has a huge project on explainability, which has done has boosted a lot of research in this area in US. So it started in 2016, and then it has really boosted the research and innovation in this area. So again, so here you see there is this explanation model which is composed by two parts. One understand the models that we have created, or the methods. The other one understand the users, and then that means in the it's not enough to know machine learning. It's not enough to know all that you can do for explaining the black box, but also we need to know how to really interact, what to propose to the user. So that means that here we are really at the cornerstone of several disciplines. So it's AI, human computer interaction, social science as well. So I think it's fun because of that. But we have to be conscious that the territory is not only computer science. So that's another. And of course, what I'd say so far is not that. So this pipeline of the design is not something new for many of us. So even though so we have now this nice requirements. So those which are working in data mining, machine learning, knowledge discovery, they know that if you want to deploy an AI system which is AI based, there are steps that are there. So if there is a bad design such that you don't have checked the bias, the one that you know, of course, you may not know all the bias. There might be not all the bias may be treated, not may be discovered, but otherwise you need to do the effort. So do not confuse the bad design with the real challenge, because sometimes I see system, this system is not there are bias, but you know that if you build a system on a woman population, how can you use on a man population? Maybe so there are things that we already knew that have to be checked. And what I consider very, very important, it's so out of this new thing of ethical AI. So it's this idea of responsible AI. So this is some advertisement for this book, which is not mine. So, but it's Virginia Dignum book, Responsible Artificial Intelligence. I think she made an effort to really to tackle all the aspects which are there. So, and she is nice that she said that we have to, there are 3 dimensions of ethics. It's not only ethics by design, it's ethics in design. So the one that we already knew, ensuring that development of the process takes into account ethical and societal implications. So in design, it's satisfy the requirements. Ethics by design, that means that you may incorporate ethical principle within the system, So reasoning, so ethical as part of the behavior of your system. And then for designers, for responsibility, the stakeholders and certification system. There are those 3 dimensions that are, I think, consider them the real novelty contribution to the so assessment. So we need to be sure that in the design phase we take all the process into account, all the ethical and social implication. But we might even insert some behavior. I do only one simple example: the network effect. Recommendation system are trying to reproduce the our confirmation bias. So in some sense, they try to propose something that or always like to us. And this is a sort of a network effect. If you think in terms of bubbles, for example, in the case of social media information. So this is exactly this system which tries always to propose to you what you better mostly like. And so, of course, you maximize the link, you follow the link. So there is a business model behind this. But this means that you will always stay in your bubble and you'll be not exposed to diversity. So this is what this message is. So also considering the implication, the social implication. So you might recommend a system that include also diversity in the recommendation. So the final story is that now there are plenty of a framework which tries to settle the stage for auditing, for assessment, and that will be part of the regulation imposed that you have done this for, at least for the high risk one. So there is a variety of this is from the UK, so which are the specific risk areas and what should be done. Plenty of guidelines. Also IBM, Microsoft are proposing guideline for developers for fact sheet, for increasing trust in AI services through supply declaration of conformity. In this case, is the supplier that declares the conformity. I mean, those will be the things that will be debated. We made a comparative comparison among the various proposals. So Altai is the assessment list from the high-level expert group. Then there's for public administration from I don't remember the definition. So IBM, Microsoft. So, and they differ from in terms of questions that at each step of the design should be. I'm finished.
No. We are very interested in
okay. So this is my take-home message. I'm a fan of Asimov. That was my adolescence. Maybe the young that don't know this author. You only know also Dune. Dune was from our age. So and he wrote for years. He wrote a lot of books on robots, and after 30 years that he was writing books on robots, he was a little bit scared by the society that he painted. He was asking himself, so imagine this kind of society that he was thinking in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. I think he wrote till the end of the 60s. He wrote for 40 years. Short story, mainly short stories. And he was saying, there might be a risk for the society. There might be dystopias. So things, and they were saying, but of course, knowledge has its risk. But humans have been capable for any new technology, for any new that there are risks, have been also capable of inventing the I'd say the defense. So knives are made with handles so that they can be used without danger. Electric wires are insulated. So we have been capable of inventing the appropriate counter measure for the risk. So so safety may be not perfect when this new technology comes to be so invasive in society, but the greater the human ability, the more advanced it will be. That's why I'm so convinced that all the effort that we are doing in explainability, which is a basic brick of many of those things, is really an important actions, and we are lucky to be within a bigger picture, which is the one of a responsible AI. I think it's really the way to go. I've concluded.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I think this talk deserves. So I would like to adapt this meeting right now to a very brief set of Q&A regarding this talk to Fosca, to whoever is interested, followed by a brief break in which we can refresh ourselves, and then we can start with the whole panel, a more comprehensive discussion. So I would like to open the floor to different questions, and if not, we can start. Do you want to?
Let's give a chance, Paolo.
Oh yes.
So nice talk. Yeah, nice talk. Thanks for the talk. So I have a question. So basically, how do you imagine that we will have machines able to create explanations on the fly for different communities? So you may be very good creating an explanation from an expert, but the non-experts will need different kind of explanations, and then different social situations may need different explanations. And if you go for natural language, imagine that you have a service that is given by a city just to offer citizen aids for poverty or for electricity or for just going to the school. You will have to have different levels of explanation because situations will be so different, and the level and the precision of the explanation will be different. So first you need a machine that is able to reflect on the level that they have to give to each person the explanation. So how do you imagine that that will be created?
Yeah, I think what has been happened in AI in the last period is that we made a lot of effort in learning, but there are all the other components of AI, which is reasoning, perception, interacting. All those components now I think they have to contribute. I mean, of course, it's not we've been understanding the users and being capable of providing the appropriate means. I mean, I could say the chatbot technology may need to take this task. So we need to put together the various technologies in the same with the same task. So if it's interacting machine and the person, that will mean that we need to understand the users and be capable of understanding its capacity, its background, and providing the appropriate messages. It's not a, it's a combination of techniques. It's not only learning or explaining the black box model or whatever. It is also understanding the users. Does it? But that means reasoning. That means perception. That means interactions.
Thank you for this excellent presentation. I really like that you relate to Asimov. The book that I like the most is Foundation. And in Foundation, you have this empire, which is very stable. And this is the question. We have these goals, like to assure that some principles will, they're important. But maybe instead of adding more penalties and regulations that will stop people making something, maybe a better way to achieve these results is through incentives. What do you think about this? Incentives instead of penalties.
This is a very, very interesting and nasty question. So I mean, incentives doesn't work for everybody. So incentives, and so far didn't work. So in some situations they didn't work. I think that we need to regulate. So on this topic, I'm quite because regulating is not reducing the capacity of innovation. It is a boosting of new inventions. There are plenty of examples that we can think, like when we reduce the fuel in the fuel of cars, the percentage of piombo was
Lead.
yeah. So I remember that time, everybody was complaining, the car manufacturing will crash completely. So that's and then as being an incentive, so the regulation by itself has been an incentive to innovate, to create new electric vehicles, to create I think that we have to be visionary enough to see all the aspects. Of course, if you think probably at the cost of tomorrow, the cost of I mean tomorrow meaning just one day after you, will be the fact that you also have to invest on the assessing, as with the belt. So the cars now cost much more because everybody has to have the belt. So this is also I consider the regulation a boost to innovation. So that's a very, very, very. So.
Yes, one last question, and then we might have a break and then continue after the break.
Do you hear me? Yeah. I'm concerned about using AI for explaining AI. Because, I mean, when we are using an interactive system, I mean, the most difficult thing is that we do not understand yet how humans talk, how humans have conversations between them. For us, it's really, really easy. For machines, it's not that easy. Then you have one option. I mean, you do everything rule-based, and then it will be a system that will be really horrible because it will have a lot of limitations. Or you use AI. I mean, systems that can adapt to the environment, then they use reinforcement learning, or they use, in the best of the case, reinforcement learning who adapts better. But you see what I mean is that you are using AI to provide explanations to an AI system. And it's like tricky, I think, because I mean, for building dialogue, we also need data. The data maybe is biased. We also train models for understanding, for generating data. For choosing the best answer, we might use reinforcement learning. So you see, it's a very complex system.
Yeah, but that's why you
full
need
of
to.
AI.
I agree.
So it's very. I
know.
don't see it yet.
I agree. I agree with you completely. So that's why we need the assessment. We need really to put in place a completely different way to validate the system. Maybe with humans. Thanks to the vaccine technology. So you will not put a vaccine without having done all the trials, so if a system has certain level of risk, you have to do all those steps which you were not thinking. So you do the chatbot, and then you put on the market soon, and then you skip completely this strong validation and maybe a trial which involve different steps. I agree with that. Yeah, it's a pipeline of architecture. It's complex. So I agree with you, but that's on the other side, we want systems which are adapted. Otherwise, but we need to control. If we don't are capable of controlling, maybe we don't put them on the market. So we wait till we are inventing both the technology also for controlling. But we need to invest also on that side. So the message is that we need to invest also in the technology for the trustworthiness.
Thank you for the discussion. I would like to now open the break. In a sense, do you say to start to break a little bit? I see that there are some questions in the audience that we will address those. There are also some questions in the chat, but I think that now is a good moment for 5-10 minutes coffee break and to refresh our minds.
Okay, thanks.
And then we will start later. About
we are also free not to follow your question. So you can put any question, I will give any answer.
Yes. Okay. Hi. Hi, everyone.
Politician too. No.
So now that we are back to the break, let me introduce our three panelists for today. First, here to my right, I have Carles Sierra, who is the director of the Spanish National Research Council, the Artificial Intelligence Institute, and the Euro AI. Also, we have Premak Bacek, who is from the University of Warsaw, who is now the Warsaw University of Technology. Also, we have Lina Marias, who is a senior researcher at Orange. So thanks everyone for coming. Right now, if anyone has a question as a starter, as an icebreaker, we can start.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to add anything.
Or we start speaking.
Yep.
No, one thing, I don't know. I mean, you open so many. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, is it working? Okay. So you open many points in your talk, and I wanted to take one to see whether that can be a bit controversial, let's say. So I agree with this definition by Asimov about risk, and actually this is what makes, for instance, that engineers have designed autonomous metro trains, because they managed to diminish the risk up to a level in which the metro was capable of running without significant risk. But for instance, not for trams. So they're autonomous trams, but they have to have a driver next to them, so that unforeseen circumstances may make them act. So they are autonomous in a sense, but they do not achieve autonomy level 5, as is what we would like to have in terms of cars. Now, the engineers that develop automotive industry or work in the automotive industry, they have their sector regulated. Now, there is a point, I don't know what my colleagues will think, is whether we really needed to regulate AI, or we just needed to regulate the different sectors and simply update the sectors with a new technology that is being used in those sectors, and not regulating a technology per se, which is quite a complicated, quite a difficult endeavor. So that would be one maybe question to see what you think about the endeavor. Me personally, I think I'm more leaning towards regulating the sector and updating the regulations of the different sectors with new technology than regulating AI. Among many other reasons is because the definition of AI is very, very, first, controversial, the one that is being taken, and second, because there is no mechanism that can tell me whether a particular algorithm in a computer is AI or not. So if I cannot make a test that says, oh, this is AI, then the thing is out of the regulation. And I think it would have been simpler or better to regulate the risks in the sectors than the technology itself. So I don't know what you think, guys, about this.
Actually, very good question. That's the very hot argument. It's not. So the first point is should we regulate a technology? Should we regulate by sector? So the Regulation Act doesn't regulate the technology, the EI by per se. It regulates EI systems, and try to formulate some borders for the EI systems. And so the difficulty now is that what about in the sectors? The sectors should have, will be a complication for the sectors because they have their own sector regulation plus the EI regulation. So can they
they will need to be blended at some point.
They should be blended, but why not? Why not in sectorial? I think that there is the EI regulation. Why that might be a push also for improving the this very typical in law that you have a general law, then you do the sectorial law, and then you say given that law, given that, then we can have something that improve or adapt the sectorial, but you have a reference that will be easier for improving the sectorial law. So it's not does not exclude, does not mean that there is only one law and that I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, no.
Maybe
no.
So if this is recorded, maybe too risky. So
maybe there was
it's a territory where
it's a difficult territory. I agree with that. At some point, one tends to think as well that because of the success of the GDPR around the globe, everybody was looking at it, and everybody actually is trying to adapt it to different countries. And maybe our European politicians had this Eurocentric thinking that they could also be the first one to regulate AI and to be, famous, let's say.
Maybe. I consider this positive. So because they've been the first in something that I consider positive. So I'm proud of this. If we succeed to have a good, at the end up with a good regulation. So, Europe, it's the only continent, among the few continents that have a public health system. We are proud of having that public health system. Someone invented this idea, so why not? Maybe a good idea. Of course, I'm not. I'm sure there might be. We will discover something that will be difficult. So for sure, but the principle there. And also, it's an innovation, but there is also other countries that are looking to that.
Yeah.
Regarding
I mean, we can open all the topics. I mean, we need to talk for
I
a couple
have
of
a
hours, I
question
think.
regarding the definition of AI. What if somebody write a lot of rules like if else rules, but I mean,
there are three. They insert the learning based on machine learning. There are system based on statistical, and then there is
If I may,
yeah. But then what about, for instance, for the credit in a bank? What if the bank hires some engineers, system engineers, and then they write some rules, and it's a bit obscure how they give or deny credit to a client? I mean, this doesn't need explanation, or is just for AI systems?
I think yes.
Answering yes means it's a sector that needs to be regulated.
It's a sector that needs to be regulated. That already is regulated.
So the giving credit has to be regulated.
Yeah, it has to be regulated.
Not AI. I mean,
Because in US it's very well known that there is a bias against Black people, and it's almost impossible for them to have credit.
You know, I have to admit, we are collaborating with companies. I mean, the majority, and so far we don't have big contact with banks. As my institute. Now, those which are asking for collaborations are mostly banks, and banks are interested to counterfactual. So that's a very surprising thing. So they are very much. So those examples that I show, they are from banks, but they are not a result of research. They are really systems. So I think for them the interest is also the trust. It's not only it's the trust of the client. It's also, I would say, a sort of self-certification that you are in all this story. There is also what is called ethical wash. There is the risk that you say that you do something and then you don't do. But
actually, I have a question related to this. Because this is something that is happening, at least in Poland, with banking law. It is expected to have these explanations, but do we have technology for this? Do we really have technology for explanations today? Maybe it's too early for enforce these regulations. And what I saw in literature is a growing number of papers related to fair washing, XI washing, to avoid, to look for some hidden paths to actually comply with regulations, but do not bring any real value. So do we have today technology for satisfying these goals?
I think that the technology for assessing, for assessing, I mean, the technology for explanation so far, I think that by if you take a vertical application, I mean, you may formulate some good explanation, good interface for a vertical domain. We have the technology for. There is plenty of technology around. There are still missing points. Of course, as researchers, maybe we look to the very difficult ones. And from the innovation point of view, you can stay with some intermediate results. So I think that we can also build some vertical where you do the effort of putting in your design also the end users. That's the very important point, is that if you want to do explanations at the end, you have to, in your design, you need to have the users which co-design with you the interface, what is the final. And of course, you have to do all the validations, all the other stuff, no bias, discriminations, check for all those things, have to be privacy, all those other components. It's not that you do explanations and your system may violate the privacy, because this is another important point from research questions, is that you want explanations. Are you sure that your explanation doesn't violate the privacy of someone else? So that's also another interesting question. There are also, among all these ethical issues, there might be conflicts among them, so that need to be considered. So for the various, once you have the case in front of you.
Yeah, I agree. I think making a system explainable doesn't make the system good.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are many bad systems that can be clearly
Exactly.
explained,
Exactly.
and we should avoid them, let's say. Something I liked in your presentation, and I think I completely agree, and you were mentioning that. I can take this off. This reminds me of the PhDs in the Netherlands, because in the Netherlands you have a hat, okay, and when you are talking, you have to put the hat on, and then you can talk, and then when you are not talking, you take the hat. It's very medieval, let's say.
In the
Netherlands,
PhD,
in the PhD committees. Yes. Anyway, so there. Have you ever been there? No. I mean, it's very funny. So, I mean, sociologists and linguists and people in the human sciences have to find all sorts of measures. And we came across one that we are using in a paper now that is very funny, is how explainable or how easy is to understand a particular sentence. And there are mathematical measures for that. There is one that is, you can take a paper and pencil, 0.4 times, and then there are two elements inside the parentheses. One is the number of words divided by the number of sentences, which tells you how long sentences on average are, plus 100 that multiplies another relation, which is the number of complex words divided by the number of words. So it makes that if you use complex words, then the complexity increases. Okay, this measure, if it is around 10, it's students that are in at the end of kindergarten, let's say. If it is 12, it is high school. If it is 17, it's college. And they have done these studies about the difficulty in comprehending these methods, which somehow, I don't know, there is no, I haven't seen theoretical studies about that, but to me, this amounts to the amount of information that basically you're compressing from an information theory perspective. Is how much information are you putting into the sentences. Now, you mentioned in your talk, and I don't know what my colleagues would think, whether these kind of measures are good enough. Should we as engineers rely on that, on this kind of measure that have been contrasted? Or should we always go through the users checking our systems? Because that will add an extra cost that will be astronomical. So engineers, when they are doing their tests of risk in autonomous driving metros or trams, I mean, possibly they just check the technology. They don't need the humans going around in front of the metro. The question is, do we really need to involve the user with the extra cost that will represent in order for us to check that our explainability is good enough? Can't we find methods that would allow us to say tick off, explainability is good?
Yeah, I think very interesting, very interesting. And the part of the answer is in your metrics. Your metric is a metric which comes also from the complexity of a word, which is not computer science. So you need to have a lexicon which is done by experts that give a weight of
in
the
English,
complexity.
They say long words.
Yes,
have a measure in English,
depends by the language. So that means that you need a language expert. Some it's not only domain. This, and maybe there is also for the. But there are some models from psychologists or for other kind of discipline that we might inherit for doing something that help us to measure. I don't think that you need always the users, but strongly depend by the. But it's not only related to explainability, and it's human-computer interactions. They know very well that they need to have some form of user modeling, and also sometimes involve the users in the co-design. So I don't think this is a recipe which holds for any things. Ideally, it would be okay. You have a measure, and I'm okay, but.
Yeah, my point is that I'm talking too much. I finish with that. The AI Act doesn't give the measures. Yeah. So that's my problem.
By that measure, I mean, what is the definition of complex word?
They say in English is the length, and then the amount of times it is used.
The frequency of the word. Yeah, because that can be obscure, of course, the definition of complexity of a word. If it's the frequency, Yeah, well, I imagine the most frequent words usually are I mean, the prepositions.
For them, the most
and,
important one is the length, more than the frequency. The length. In
mhm.
English is that particular thing. I don't know, in other languages it will be different.
You know, sentiment analysis, for example, it's expert here. So you may do completely automatic, or you may use a lexicon, which give a weight to several words, and those lexicon may depend by the domain. That means that weight. For example, we work on measuring happiness, and we use a lexicon which is done by measuring happiness. It's something which is for very important for demographer. So it's they do with a lot of surveys. So it's not something. So we use the lexicon that some specialists provide, and then you have machine learning methods which use that lexicon. So there might be plenty of way of it.
Yeah, but it was raising these issues because the thing is that in the AI Act, it doesn't go down to that point. So if you say you need explainability, you need transparency, yeah, but what does it mean? It is extremely difficult. For lawyers, they say, we don't want to be very precise because we want the judge.
Something that I didn't present, I don't know if the slide was not there. There is a work done by Alan Turing Institute that made a survey. Of course, there are a lot of different kinds of explanations. So explaining the data, explaining, and also they try to provide a set of recommendation, suggestion how to assess this kind of different level of explanation which are needed when you design the system. It's very well done. It's a work that has also imported a lot of, but yeah. So I think we are
Getting there.
At the beginning of the story, probably.
Yeah.
I want to say something regarding human-computer interaction. I mean, in statistical probabilistic systems, we usually simulate the user. I mean, we simulate the user is a program, and then we have a system that learns from the user with reinforcement learning, and the user can give him penalize him or give him a good reward. And with this, it learns by itself when it is ready, because it gets a good reward in total. Then it can be tested with real humans. And in this case, the human is in the loop. But what if these humans, evaluate the system, but it's in a subjective way, of course, then we don't know if the explanations are good or not. I mean, they are based on the criteria of some final users. So.
Yeah, but also in the medicine, there is this when they do trials, there are some cases where there's been specific reactions. So I think that we have to learn to formulate this kind of trials and to measure, to stay with these measures.
May I return to this fault index? Because the fault index was defined as number of years of education needed to understand a given text. This is kind of proxy. And it's the same with the explanations. Like for credit scoring, we may expect a very different stakeholders, starting from people after the primary school to experts. So to satisfy this really good goal, to make people aware of risks, should we also consider trainings, massive trainings related to literacy, to make people aware of limitations of AI? It's not only that we can improve this collaboration between human and model through changes in a model, we may also consider some changes in the human perception of AI. What do you think about this? Do we need this massive AI literacy, or it's not needed?
Yeah, we need for a lot of different motivations, not only for explanations. We need because AI it's really pervasive in many actions of our social life. So there is the need of creating awareness, but also education about this. But also we need education of the decision makers, because some of our the explanation, sometimes depending by the domain, they need to be also mathematically sound sometimes. So you need to help people to understand that they don't have in front an oracle, but there is in front someone that you say that there is some probability or some low risk or high risk. So there is some uncertainty behind this. So there has to be an understanding of this high low risk and possibly also the probabilities. I'm saying this particular for decision making. I mean the policy makers. I don't know what happened here in Spain, but during the COVID period, and so all the entire population was exposed to these models, the numbers, the infographics, and people were astonished of sometimes of having this language, this language that and particularly sometimes the politicians then made some interpretation that were then argument of jokes. So we need improve the literacy of population at each level. So I agree this, but not only for international, also for what does imply the fact that you receive a lot of recommendation, and those recommendations not necessarily are always they are paid, so they are so there is a business model behind. They're not so literacy, massive literacy. It's important. To this aim, Finland has done this course, Elements of AI, maybe that you know, and now there is this agreement at European level that all the countries will generate a translation in the language. We have done in Italy just not 5-6 months ago. It's being opened. There are more than 700,000 people that they access. And maybe they are students, maybe they are people which are curious. But it is important that to increase the literacy on AI.
I'd like to take another point. I mean, we are jumping from one to another, but that's right. Okay. That's so let me take the hat off. So I liked one mention you made, the explanation as a conversation. And I think this is a very important point. And I mentioned that because we are doing some research on this aspect. This Socratic way, or the demiurgo, in which you ask questions, and then by asking questions, basically you do two things. You solve a problem by question and answers, or you understand a problem by question and answers. And I think we are approaching that in a couple of projects. One of them is by one of the PhD students in this Marie Curie's network by Curat, which is understanding the way, for instance, medical doctors solve problems in their clinical meetings, in which basically they expose the facts and the initial diagnosis, and they challenge one another, and they bring in new information in order to find in the end what is the final solution. And the structuring of that protocol is very important in order to do problem solving as a conversation. And I think the explainability is structural in that sense, so that it comes out of the problem solving. So I think this is something we should explore more. And the other thing we are doing is understanding by a conversation is another case in which basically it is an optimizer. It's for team formation, okay? And it's an optimizer that basically has a number of constraints. And in the end, generates a number of teams. Okay, now, you could start putting questions like, well, why is John and Mary in different teams? Because they live together or whatever. Why are they in different teams? Then the system, what it can do is to generate alternative solutions contrastive solutions, so that they can be compared. And by doing that and seeing the different outcomes, the different results, then you can understand somehow the workings of the optimizer. So I think in both cases, understanding explainability as a conversation, I think is key. And I think we should explore that a lot in what we do.
I agree. agree completely. And in the project, excited that I'm working on, it's so I call this the Dr. House model.
Okay.
The Dr. House model. We are always joking about this Dr. House model, but it makes sense. So there is this very intelligent doctor that has many intelligent collaborators, which provide new data, new hypotheses, new challenge him, but at the end he is responsible for the final decision. Dr. House is responsible, but the others are. So this is exactly this model. We have to model how is this decision-making process working with this collaborative work. I think I agree with you. That's
And it has, because we are seeing it from a multi-agent perspective. So it has the social aspect that sometimes I think we forget in explainability. It's more explaining an algorithm. No, look, it's a collective decision-making. So the explanation has to involve the different participants in the decision. Systems are complex. I think it was you mentioning before that we are facing very complex systems with many different stakeholders. So we need to involve everybody.
Conversation is complex. It's really complex. So it's, as I say, it's using AI to explain AI. So for instance, if you use conversation to explain something, you ask a question, but the system should understand the question, and we have to be sure that it's understanding. And if there is a misunderstanding, there is uncertainty, then we have to measure this uncertainty. And then if he answers a completely different thing, it has to, you have to explain why it is answering things that has nothing to do to the question. There are ambiguity at many levels and a lot of linguistic phenomena. For instance, if the conversation gets long, you usually don't repeat again and again, but you use pronouns, or you have pointers to things that you said before, and then that makes conversation much more complex. So yeah, I think it's very interesting, and it's the future. But I say be aware. We are using AI for explaining AI. So it's like a complex task.
In our case, we are limiting the language. We understand all these problems, and of course, there were these discussion about challenges. I think semantics is the big challenge of AI. We have not reached a situation in which machines really understand what they are doing. One example appeared also. We are very good at finding correlations, but we are very bad at finding causality.
Yeah.
And this is a tremendous challenge. Correlations can lead you to tremendous mistakes. There was this classical example about the cows and the camels. You train the system to identify cows and camels, and then when you put a camel in a zoo in London, then it identifies that as a cow. Why? Because the system learned sand and grass. So it didn't learn the animal, it learned the context where the pictures were taken. And these are correlations that do not have meaning behind them. So we have to make a long way into building semantics. And I agree with you, there are dangers there. When you build the explainer, it has to be an explainer that can be explained.
In the context.
Yeah.
Because one thing is semantics out of context, and another thing is semantics in the context. And we see in the social media, if we have something that is completely out of context, we can understand it in very different ways.
True.
So, conversation, from my point of view, is like the most difficult level of NLP because it groups together all the several linguistic levels.
Yeah, in our approach, we are always limiting what the conversation can be.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you fall in all these traps. Yeah. I don't know. You had questions?
No, I would like to give the opportunity to the audience to pose any question if they had. Yes. Also, there were questions on the chat, so I think that's now a great opportunity. So let's start chronologically, maybe. So Salam Al-Rabadi asks 2 questions. One, what are the possibilities and possibilities of finding fair or neutral behavior in algorithms. 2, how can the question of accuracy and reliability of algorithms be assessed in the light of their wide diversity? And 3, what is the degree of independence of artificial intelligence that is sufficient to limit the moral and legal liability of persons supervising software for the consequences of artificial intelligence actions? 4, do companies bear the responsibility of biased issues?
So you want us to run your PhD? Or
I think you...
So I can take one. I mean, I don't
yes,
know,
pick your favorite one.
Well, maybe the first one.
It's your turn. It's your turn. Go ahead.
No, I mean, so it's the first one of it. Yeah. The question, there is this discussion about ethics by design or ethics in design or ethics for designers that was mentioned before. I think we need to go a bit farther than that. So we need ethics, sorry. we need ethics awareness in our systems. So ethics as any system of values is something that is dynamic, depends on context, depends on culture. I can put you an example of culture. I will open a parenthesis here. So the language of Rwanda, Kino Rwanda, I think is the name of the language, is a language that has a lot of long words and is very rich in grammar. So to convey the same message that in 140 characters you have in English, you need 250 in Kinyarwanda. So the thing is, the engineers that designed Twitter were Americans, were speaking English, and were not from Rwanda. So that made a complete bias, if you want, in the perception of what can be said in a small text. Okay, I close the parenthesis. But in order to be able that our systems work in a dynamic context, in a dynamic set of values, in a changing context, we need more. We need to make the system aware of the values that the community interacting through the software is holding. And that means learning the values. That means getting the semantics of the values and then modifying the behavior according to what those meanings of the values are. And that's why I think finding fair or neutral behavior in algorithms means that we need to explain what fairness is, or learn what fairness is by the interaction with the members of the community. And then once that's a value that the members of the community claim they want to have, the software should be able to adapt and behave according to that value. So this relationship between communities and the value shared there and the software that is interacting has to be dynamic, has to be embedded in the system, not going back to the engineer's table to redesign the system. It should be capable of adapting to that. So that's my view on the first one.
So you mean that an algorithm should be able to learn automatically the value of a society instead of being hard-coded by the designer?
Correct. That's my point.
I see. It's very. I think it's very difficult to grab as a.
It is very challenging, but values. Don't forget, values is very much related to preferences of society. Yeah. Learning the preferences of society is something that is difficult, but is not impossible.
Makes sense.
Question? I'm thinking the last would be possible for presentation slide to be shared.
Yes. The question of Alexander Gregor: will it be possible for the presentation slide to be shared?
The answer is no.
Okay.
Now another one.
Okay, another one. Okay, this is not a question. When talking about explainability and accountability responsibility, how do we explain, for instance, Facebook's CEO's statement regarding the whistleblower case a few days ago, which, by the way, I'm not aware of? We are talking about human centering and autonomy of action, but from the ethical standpoint, we have not advanced that much. I do not see regulation as the answer. What do you think?
So here, well, I don't know what the CEO said, but basically here the problem is like in Schwarz's model of values. I mean, it's a matter of preference of values. What this lady was saying is that making money, which is a reasonable value for a company, and and respecting respecting the I would say the ethical values, or respecting the harmony in society, avoiding hate speech or whatever. So it cannot be that you prefer this, the making money, over the other one. So there is a matter of the preference. So companies apply their preference without taking into account the preferences of the society. And this is what has to change. Yeah. And okay.
No, I mean, with the values, there is plenty of conflicts.
Yes.
So, and when there are conflicts among values, so I mean, the right of doing business with the right of not hurting
not hurting the people.
The people, so there has to be a choice, a preference. And the regulation should help in this direction in some sense. A regulation in general. So I'm not saying this one. Maybe it will not succeed to cover all the things, but.
So yeah, but I mean, well, he doesn't see regulation as the answer, but at some point it has to be some. I mean, in our democracies, I mean, the parliaments, someone should decide what should prevail.
For example, when Twitter banned Trump at the end of the so I don't think that wasn't a duty of Twitter of deciding who banning or not. So there should be sort of at the end there should be a regulation that says okay. So there are plenty of regulations that regulate our social life. So that's why our society, our living together, it's being in the square is regulated. So we do not hurt people. So that should be. Yep. It's a responsibility of a democratic society, taking the responsibility of giving priorities.
From Facebook point of view, do you think that when you have ads, I mean, we should have like an explanation why are we seeing these ads or things like that? But when we are using Facebook as users, you see, sometimes we receive a different kind of ads. The explainability there will be like to understand why I'm receiving this information.
Something has been regulated. That the ads now they have explicitly say that those are recommended. Those are ads. They are not. So the ranking is because depending by the how much the people paid, and so that the companies paid. So you may not remember, but 5 years ago was not like this. I don't know when. So it was a regulation that at the end there should be explicit toward the user, which are the ads which are supported, and then those are the result of the search of people. So maybe I'm too old, but before it wasn't clear.
No, I think I mean. I don't know whether people, I mean, any decision of any algorithm should be explainable. If that's the case, then if we agree that that's the case, because it's a risky situation, which I doubt in this case, because this is publicity. So I guess that will not be considered by the AI Act. Correct me if I'm wrong. It will not be a high risk.
It was not only publicity. I mean, in times of Brexit that I mentioned, I was receiving information.
Yeah, but it's not buying a pair of shoes.
Voting leave.
Voting. Yeah, true. But in the case of Facebook now, it's making money by selling your shoes. I mean, the question is, I mean, if there is hate speech or there is certain interactions, then apparently you read more and then you see more ads, and the probability you buy more is higher. So is this licit?
It's licit, but it should be
it's not really
transparent.
Yeah, because if I can add and then I would like to open the question to, but in this case, if I read correctly the AI regulation, one of the very prohibited tasks is to manipulate, no? And so, and I think this is a nice discussion point, because in a sense, explanation can be seen as persuasion, and in an extreme sense, in an extreme view, also as a manipulation. But going back to the ad, the whole ad industry is about persuading you to get to buy something, no? And in the most extreme case of Brexit and of the scandal of Cambridge Analytica, as I understood, there was this targeting of the market of people which were susceptible to change their opinion, and they were targeted with fake news. And okay, and I can imagine that in that case, the devil is in the use of malicious information in order to persuade. But what do you think about this whole issue? If you have any opinion, any statement.
Manipulation, the thing is that manipulation can be manipulation for good and manipulation for bad.
Yeah.
We all manipulate one another. We manipulate our children. Education is manipulating. It is embedding certain set of values in kids. You can embed certain values or other values. Mm-hmm. This is like Groucho Marx. I have principles. If you don't like them, well, I have others. Okay, so it's this idea that you can change the value. So manipulation can be for good or for bad in societies. There is certain type of manipulation that is accepted as something that is positive, and certain manipulations that is not accepted. So it's not just manipulation per se; it's manipulation for what? And this is what has to be regulated.
Yes, but it's very complicated because everything is a manipulation, as you said. So
yes, exactly. That's why you need to say we accept education, and we have education is obligatory, and we say what should be educated, and we cannot tolerate someone saying that the earth is flat or it was created by a certain God as scientific principles. We say that, we regulate that.
There is an
initiative
which is called Global Partnership on AI, which is an initiative where many countries adhere.
The Canadian one.
The Canadian one started from France and Canada, where the objective is again it's another level of regulation, trying to investigate even further the potential risk or how to push adoption of AI. So, and one of the topic it's disinformation. It's which is it's one of the and there is a special regulation. Also, Europe is moving towards a different regulation for misinformation in social media. So it's not that. This is also a sectorial area which has much more issues that we are treating.
That's a very good point. Why AI is being regulated and not social media? That's a question to the parliament. Why they started with AI instead of starting with social media?
No, they are.
Yeah. But I mean,
but
there is no social media act, as far as I know. I mean, maybe I missed that. But
no. But in this case, this is the problem of what is which kind of use you do of persuasion.
I'm just saying that from the new technologies, social media is one, blockchain is another one, AI is another one. I mean, they have chosen AI. I mean, okay.
They're the ones they do.
Una alla volta. So more questions.
Yes. Yes, please, Joanna and Alexandra. And maybe Joanna first because she had a question also before the break.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to ask you and all the panelists a question. And actually, what do you think? How can I say? What do you think? Why do you think we demand higher explainability requirements from machines or from AI systems compared to humans? And whether you think that this is an interest and a debate that will stay, or it's just related to the novelty of these developments and the fear that might result from them? And yes, that's the first question. So why do we demand higher explainability requirements from us?
Yeah, but it's not higher than the one that humans it's higher than the one that machines are capable of producing. And it's true what you're saying. There is this pressure and interest towards explainability because now the systems are much more sophisticated, are capable of acting and suggesting to user much more sophisticated things, sophisticated and precise, even precise. But we saw that even if they are very accurate, there might be some risks. So the problem is that first of all, we have to consider that risk. And the explanation may help a little bit because if the judges that have you seen the compass before, the compass if you give to the judges only a high or low risk, or if you give a different information, say, okay, this has been recommended with high risk of recidivism because of its age and also its race and also this, then you can start to the judges can say, okay, the race is there, this is not so maybe hidden, but so the race is there, so give me some example, and then the example, you see that the exemplar that you show, you see that in majority they are black. So if the judges start to, so the challenge that we are saying before, so this conversation with the judges and the machine provide more information that explain the logic for which the machine has used it to arrive to that recommendation. So they put you in the judges in conditions of deciding or not to ask further information, to ask for some other take the decision not only with that information or having other extra information. If you just give a number, high risk, so it's very difficult that humans put, it has to be very, very highly educated to say, okay, you say high risk, but I don't trust you, and I take further consideration by myself. So, so the risk is that if we go in a society where particularly in decision support system, thanks to the physicians, okay, I say, okay, this is this spot on the spot is at high.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So if this spot on your skin, it's at high risk, cancer, and I don't give other information, or the physicians trust completely me, or even maybe, I don't know, timid, I'd say, to doubt on the algorithm. Okay, so, and this is also give the responsibility to someone else. Okay, so this is the decision of the algorithm, and that's it. So we have to avoid this kind of situations where the humans, they give the responsibility to a machine.
Yeah.
Let me just add something to this. Okay, I think that another problem is that we don't have good measures of performance. So we have a lot of examples in which systems are not working correctly, even the performance on validation data is high. So we need this additional ways to assure the system is working correctly. So if not performance, then what? Maybe explanations. So I think this is why we need these additional expectations.
I think I may need to contradict my colleagues to some extent. I recommend you a book called entitled How Humans Judge Machines. I don't know if you've seen that book around, but by Cesar Hidalgo and others. And basically, it's the contrary, because we assume, I haven't read it completely, but as far as I read it, because we assume that humans have intentions, we ask for further explanations to humans than we do to machines. The fact that we are not associating intentions to machines make that we accept their decisions in a more simple way. So I would say that these guys report a number of experiments they made. So there is evidence that we ask for more explanations to humans. Yeah. I mean, the executive summary is amazing. I mean, I really is in my reading list. How humans judge machines. So
we have another question.
So thank you very much for the presentation. When we talk about the right to explanation, it normally comes with the right to information. They are both in the GDPR. But as you mentioned, we lawyers are waiting for judges to say what these rights imply. And now they are kind of not empty, but unclear. But when we think about we need to understand the machine to defend ourselves, I might not only think about understand the final decision, that why I was denied a credit because I didn't have enough income or because I live in a certain neighborhood. I will maybe prefer to understand the whole decision-making process, because I will try to understand if a human was behind that decision. So if both rights now are now empty, don't you think that the AI regulation can help in that sense? Because it is creating a transparency and accountability framework that is quite strict and quite strongly. And that's true, it's only for the companies or the firms, like users or final individuals will not have access to that information. But in that sense, companies will start to think, well, if I need to provide all this information to the people that is buying my products, to the people that is using my products, maybe it's also useful if I provide this information to the final individuals. Like, what is your opinion regarding that?
I think you touch a fantastic point, and I fully agree with you, because the regulation involves all the organization. So it refers to the society, that is building technology, not just the engineers that are building something, but is the decision makers, the organization. And you're right, when you ask for explanations, you don't just need to ask for explanations about the technology, but it's about the chain of command. Okay, but then that decision, who made it effective and for what reasons? And so I agree. The AI Act is good in that respect, that it involves not just technology, but the organizations around it. So yeah, I think it's positive.
Any other question? Yes.
Thank you. It's more like an observation and a question at the same time. As far as I understood, you perceive explainability as a tool in order, like, you really link explainability to correctness or to fairness. For example, you started at the beginning your talk talking about correctness of the AI decision. You described cases where decisions were false or not fair, and therefore we need explanation. And I would, in this way, the nature of explainability appears really instrumental, and it rather serves the purpose of fairness or correctness rather than human agency or autonomy, as you said at the beginning, or I perceived it like this. I don't know if, and I would think from a legal point of view that would be really important to understand what explainability actually serves, and because probably serves other rights rather than being a purpose on its own. And I would like to have your opinion on this.
This is very interesting. You know, in fact, so I'm working this project, which is there is a work package which is trustworthy AI, and it is organized in 6 dimensions. It has explainability, it has safety and robustness together. Yes, privacy, it has accountability. But then we discovered that actually explainability, it serves all the others. So it's true what you're saying. It's by perceive a right when we are talking about human agency, for example. So in that case, it is meant towards supporting that principle. But in all the other dimensions, you need to have explainability. So that's why we say that in fact there are several actors in the game, because if you put in the game, for example, also explainability for inspecting the system, so for debugging. So in that case, of course, you are talking about robustness. You are talking about your user. If your user is the engineer, it's not. So in that case, the kind of requirement that you want to satisfy, it's the robustness, but it is needed. It is needed. Why we are talking about explainability also in this case? Because even the data scientists, even the engineers, cannot understand what is behind a complex neural network. So you need also for the engineer a way to transform in some understandable way what is happening in the complexity of the many layers. So even for the simple that purpose, so that's a, so it's a different dimensions. It's even a different technology, because at the end the explanation will be a saliency map, as the one that I was showing with the bird. So to me, if the saliency map probably doesn't say anything, but for the engineer, the saliency map it's useful. So it's wide. It's wide. The spectrum, it's very wide. So because there are those different, both different kind of users, but also, as you are saying correctly, different principle that we want to accomplish with that. So it's not. It's very tricky. You are completely right. So
I think it would be important to narrow it down in order to be able to regulate it, and which field of law needs to regulate every aspect of explainability, because in this way it's so broad, might be not that needed to regulate it in all those aspects. And yes,
So I don't think it regulates explainability. It says explainability is a right when decisions are made that affect you in high-risk situations. So it are the decisions that need to be explained.
It's the decision that has to be
So
explained.
the question is that we as engineers, we see explainability with more facets than the legal one. Because explainability, I mentioned that. I mean, for me, explainability is a mechanism, is a tool for problem solving itself. And explainability is a tool to understand a problem better. So I see them as tools and techniques to develop systems or to develop socio-technical systems, so technology plus humans interacting. So I see it playing an important role there. What the Act says is that it is a legal right for you to receive explanations on a decision made that affects you, which is one particular vision of what explainability is. That's my understanding, at least.
Yes, a question coming back to the regulation and the debate that we have at the beginning, going out of the explainability a bit. The point is that, for example, we have ethical guidelines, as we told at the beginning. There's a lot of guidelines. This is our recommendation, how we should do different things. We can have also recommendations on how to do artificial intelligence to be good for people or whatever. And my question is, do we really need regulation or not? Is it possible that this is self-regulated in the sense that if people is not admitting an intelligence system that is not provided an explanation, could they decide not to use that system, or that is impossible and we are going to be forced to use the intelligence system, and then the only choice is that God is regulating in for the sake of ourselves? It's someone that is preserving our goodness with this regulation. I'm not sure about this, because at the end, as you say, if you are making a very strict regulation, I still wonder how this could be evaluated by a judge in order to see if it really the regulation is or a system is complying with the regulation or not. And even more, because when we start with the GDPR, what we see is that we receive many emails saying the conditions have changed, so you have to accept the new conditions. But nothing changed. You only have to accept the conditions to go on using the same service. So I'm not sure if that regulation really was protecting me more, because at the end, I have to use the system itself in the same way. So I don't feel that things change in many sense. But for companies, maybe what happened is that there was a lot of bureaucracy, more burden, administrative staff, in order to prepare many documents to answer in case that someone is coming to us if you are complying with the regulation. So I don't know. What's your opinion about this?
I think so. We need to be protected about the harmful behaviors of others. Okay. Now the way is, how do you do that? For instance, fake news. I think we all agree fake news is something that should be stopped and should be avoided. Now, there are two approaches to that. You can just go and regulate social media, artificial intelligence with respect to fake news, or do what Singapore did. Singapore did. If you propagate fake news, no matter what, technology or human, you will be either fined or put to jail. Full stop. So you are attacking the problem. So fake news are bad. So you cannot make, generate, or propagate fake news. That's one possibility. It's what Singapore did. And it's actually is a law that is on hold. They didn't need to regulate AI to do that. So the point is, do we really need to regulate technology? Regulate the problem. That's my view.
I agree, because the point is that in practice, well, we see a lot of problems that we have with electricity, with everything. Then we think if we have to regulate, how to solve the situation, because we find a problem. But you say, if the problem is not the technology itself, the technology should enable us to do something. So hopefully artificial intelligence is enabling us to do more things or more powerful decisions or whatever. And the question again, I think, is what we listened at the beginning of the debate, is the literacy on AI, the education, how we can make people really take profit of this new technology. Because at least in Spain, Fosca was asking before, but the government is always saying nobody is going to stay behind after the crisis. We are going to protect everyone. And the
That's
question
fake
is
news.
that
you mean that as an example of fake news? You mean that?
every day we have much bigger difference between people that are really poor and people that are really rich. And only a few people that are controlling the new technologies, the new AI, they are more and more rich, and they are exporting to the others that are much poorer. So this is something that needs to be controlled some way, but I don't think that it's just controlling artificial intelligence that is going to change this behavior. It's a matter of education. If people know that something is wrong and they have to behave in a different way, and they are convinced that this is the right way to do things, things can change, but otherwise.
Sorry.
You can put questions as well. You had
Yes, I.
Yeah, you have too many questions. No, sorry. No, if you have other questions.
No.
So, well, you've been addressing many.
Can you talk more closely to the?
Yeah, you're addressing many interesting things. So, it's not only that you have digital illiteracy in population. AI is just a small bit on that. So you have to be more general in approaching this. And the first is to start by educating politicians and decision makers. So it's useless that we discuss this without educating first them. And the other thing that we should avoid is to become the proxies for them. You should advise them and approach to them and try to explain which is the situation now and which will be the future from the scientific perspective point of view. Because as Carlos says, you can see in explainability a lot of facets that are related more with the technicalities or the complexity of the issue. But at the end, someone has to create a rule. And this rule should be used to regulate the interaction among citizens in freedom. And when this freedom is in danger, there should be an action to avoid those dangers for the society. And that's the task of the legislators. So first we have to address to whom has the responsibility and teach them. And then of course, you have to do a lot of work. So maybe we have to rethink formation. Carlos was using formation and education in similar ways, but it's not the same. I believe that you get educated at home and you go to the school and you get other kind of information and training, but it's not the same as education. So when you grow up, you have both. And if what happened in democracies is that families are passing this responsibility to the state, then the state does what it can do, but it also can be manipulating. And so we have, let's say, like more complex problem, but for us, the only thing is to try to advise politicians and if possible, general society, in which we see how should be the evolution of technology and how to distribute in a better way the wealth that it produces.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in the case of politicians, what we have is what he's calling in statistics a sampling bias. So what we have is parliament where 99% of the members of the parliament are lawyers. I mean, we will never make a healthy society out of that. I mean, we need a much healthier sampling of the members of the parliament where you have scientists, you have medical doctors, you have geologists, you have people with different businesses around, which is not the case. So I think with the current sampling bias, we are in deep shit.
Yeah. We are closing to concluding, but I would like to make a comment rather than a question, which I think is a theme that is emerging from the last conversation. So XAI is clearly an interaction between very different specialities. No, there is the engineer, which is trying to developing the algorithm. There is the ethical perspective. There is a regulation, a law perspective. And all these expertise are represented by very different communities that also use very different lexicon, oftentimes, to describe their desiderata, what can even be possible to do, what can even be possible to reach. So I think that maybe what is very important is to have a nice way of interacting between these communities, because, for example, for me, it was quite difficult to read the AI regulation because it was written in a legalese-like, no? And I can also imagine that the legal team that built the regulation had very much difficulties in order to understand the technology that was behind, the limitation, and the possibilities that today's advancement offers. I would like to hear any comment about this not issue, but this situation, if you have any informed guess on what is the best way maybe to better amalgamate these communities. I think doing this kind of panels certainly helps, for example, but
I don't know. I mean, it's a very difficult issue. I mean, to make people with different languages understand one another. I mean, sometimes we have these multidisciplinary projects in Europe in which you have to talk to the people from the social sciences, and it is difficult. It is difficult because when they talk about attributes, we see a variable in computing. Yeah. But for them, an attribute is a massive philosophical question, and whether you can put that attribute to people or not. So it's difficult. I don't have any magical answer, honestly. I would just say sit and talk. But
yeah, I'm much more positive. As a data scientist, I started to work with other communities since, I mean, 15 years ago. We started first because we need data from other communities, so we have to talk and to do the analytics. You need to understand the problem. You want to find scientific challenge there. So maybe you speak with the scientists of other communities. And I found it fantastic. So the book that you are reading, the book is what's the name? Cesar Hidalgo.
Cesar Hidalgo.
Cesar
Yes.
Hidalgo. It's a complex system guy, which has made its career just having this capacity of entering in a new domain, helping to finding even more interesting challenge that with the combination of different perspective or point of view of a problem. So I think that in AI now we have a fantastic moment where we can really embrace also with other communities, with lawyers. Lawyers are both companion because they are regulating, but they want to have a decision making, automatic decision making for the judicial system. So they are both users and also companions of the regulators. Same for other. I mean, as we were saying. So I think really we have to be very agnostic with respect to other communities. As a computer scientist, sometimes we prefer to have a sort of comfort zone where we stay, we talk each other. I mean, probably every community has this. But now I think we have this opportunity of opening our ways of thinking also with other communities. So I think I strongly encourage to be interdisciplinary.
I agree. I only say it's difficult. It's not easy. It's difficult.
Maybe it's just a matter.
We like difficult things.
Yeah.
Well, not every day.
No, but yeah, from the challenges,
Yeah.
always the dragons always stand on gold. No. So I think we reached the 7 p.m. and I think we had a very interesting conversation. And if nobody else has any last question or remarks, I think that we can start to think about dinner.
Well,
Thanks,
we just
thanks
had lunch.
for organizing this again. Thanks.
Thank you for your participation and thank you to the audience.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to the online attendees too.
And the technicians.
And the technicians.
And the director of the lab.